And after that game, my record was at 5-5, and I was pretty sad. However, my point spread, the differential between my scores and my opponent's scores all summed up, was pretty good. I lost that one game by 220 or 210 to Joey Krafchick, but I had won a game by 220 against Rafi, so those canceled each other out, and my losses were pretty small. I don't think I lost a game by over 50, and my wins were decent. So I wasn't that much in danger as somebody who was 5-5 and like had minus spread or very low spread. So I still had the chance to recover. And I was faced against none other than Chloe Fatsis, who's been climbing up the ranks after studying hard during the pandemic, and also her brain was getting more complex. She's still young, and her brain is still developing, so that probably helped too. And at this point, she's a solid 1800, maybe even 1900 player at her best. And so, of course, being matched with her is great because I love playing against Chloe. I love playing against people that are just really good and getting really good. But I also knew that this was not going to be a walk in the park, despite her being a lot lower rated. And yeah, the game began with this opening rack. And I exchanged OU, which we can discuss the meta of this for a long time. But there is something to be said about exchanging 3 here, because the floor of what can happen is pretty bad. Like drawing 2 vowels happens a decent amount of the time. And the ceiling is pretty good too, but I'm definitely bingoing the most after this exchange, even if Chloe reacts more defensively than she might normally after an exchange 3, for example. However, yeah, the idea of drawing 2 vowels to this is kind of unappetizing, and so there's something to be said about if you think you're a favorite to win a game, maybe taking a very small hit here and exchanging 3 rather than 2. But this is by most measures the optimal play. Chloe's opening rack is EFM OORW, and she plays woof because she wasn't sure of woofer. I've been there. Hi, Jellomochas. I've been there as well. Not being sure of woofer, wondering if it's subwoofer or whatever. And yeah, this is a small mistake, but it's not that bad considering that I exchanged 2. So giving me an E and an R actually increases my chance of bingoing significantly. So it's not as bad a mistake as it normally would be. I draw into a bingo, luckily. Dotties. Corresponds with Goy, a slur. But again, as I've mentioned before, this tournament was a WGPO tournament, and in WGPO, they are still letting people play all of the slurs. So it's a good play. Without this play, the position is a bit worse for Chloe. So yeah, here I play bleed for 31. It's my only real way of scoring decently. Of course, I'm keeping an X that doesn't really have a home, so it's not a positive leave, but the X can improve. It's possible that I will be getting a good play with it. And she actually gives me one. She plays Marlight, and she could have played Fermi or Fermi, and that wouldn't have given me the X bomb. So I get the X bomb, and I'm ahead 80. Everything's going pretty well. She plays Woe. It's a very high scoring play, but it keeps the Q and an F, which I didn't know at the time. So I knew that she was trying to keep up. And here I found a good opportunity to play defense, being ahead by 40 points. And I play Hung and A, and EH doesn't take any hooks in NWL, and Hung also doesn't take any hooks. However, there is a better play in the position, and that play is Unhung from the U and Dotties. So that play would score 26. The leave is slightly worse, but it's just a higher scoring play. It interferes with this A that might be an issue. It blocks potential high scoring plays with Marlights. So it is definitely a slightly better play than what I did. Although there's something to be said about playing this instead. It leads to me being able to play way more defensively in the future. Because otherwise it's very hard to get rid of this K column. So Hung seems like probably an equity drop, but it might actually not be a worse play than Unhung. And she plays Quash, so had I played Unhung, she would have Quash through the U anyway. Oh, thank you for cheering 100 bits, Anonymous. She would have had Quash anyway. It would have scored slightly less though. So yeah, possible that Unhung would have worked out better. However, with my N, I'm able to draw a bingo to this N. To this D, excuse me, the D and Dotty. So I'm able to play Recond. And I'm doing well here. I'm up 77 points. But Chloe draws well and makes a really nice play of Chiefest for 90 points. And actually, suddenly she's ahead. My post bingo draw, which is a draw that a lot of people dread in Scrabble. It's a way people have to complain despite having bingoed, basically, because you're drawing random letters. You have no control over what letters you draw, because you're not leaving letters on your rack that can cushion the worst draws. So people talk about post bingo dreck. They're basically saying, yes, of course I bingoed. What do you mean? I should always bingo, because I'm the best, quoting Will Anderson. But then if I draw poorly after the bingo, well, it's as if I didn't bingo at all. Anyways, here in this position, I have two candidate plays. I can play pair from A6, making P-O, A-N, I-N, and R-E. Or I can play parry through the E in Chiefest to take away the very, very scary H12 spot, given the J and the Z being unseen. If she has drawn either of those letters, she is very likely to have a huge play there. Now, in this position, I made what Quackle considers a suboptimal play of parry, taking the points for pair, leaving 2 vowels with the blank instead of 3, appears to do decently. But I'm going to give myself a pass with this play because Chloe actually had a huge G-on play through the E that I blocked, and I'm just going to act like I knew that. So yeah, I blocked that. Apparently parry is a couple points worse than pair, but in this particular instance, my play worked out. And yeah, she also had 0. Yeah, I remember that. I remember her saying, well, I mean, these are her racks. She has all of her racks. She posted the game way before I had a chance to enter my racks. because I've been doing all these coverages for you guys. Also because I wouldn't have gotten to these games very quickly anyway. Before I streamed, I was very slow at getting to all of my tournament games because there's so many of them. Anyways, I play Perry. She plays Zap. Again, like Quackle thinks this is a small mistake. It might be, it might not be. She has a reasoning here. But I think her play is totally fine. Here, I play Tui. This is probably the only play I can make here. Unfortunately, I can't score or bingo. I mean, I did keep I blank, so would have been hard to do that most of the time. But I'm trying to take out the A6 spot, even though the A1 spot is still ripe for the taking. And she uses it, plays Gion, and now she's ahead 53 points. I have the blank still. I've drawn into a bingo rack, but none of the bingos fit. And this is an interesting situation. I make a play that makes sense. Tail opens the M column for bingos. Keeps up a little bit scoring wise, and doesn't set myself up for immediate disaster if she doesn't have a bingo. If she does have a bingo, she just wins on the spot after tail, but that's the case for pretty much any play I would make here. The other option here, I think, is playing it at c2, which seems very nice. It is an aggressive play to set up the one row for a bingo. However, given what the score is, if I score 10 points, down 43, and if Chloe has even a 6-letter word that hits the H1 triple, she's going to be ahead around 70 points. And my bingo, if it fits underneath, might give her a lot of potential to come back. So it's a double-edged play if I were to play it. Possibly a better play. The two plays, tail and it, seem to have very similar results in engine simulation. So I think I'm happy with my decision. Here, Chloe makes a pretty good play of Mar, to keep the scoring pressure on and try and draw into certain 15A plays that will continue her attempts to keep scoring enough so that even if I do bingo, she can still win. So it's possible that she should play C1 Moa. I don't really buy it, but maybe C1 Moa is the play. One of the things in this position is that I have the ability to make a very direct fishing play at any point if I choose to, by creating a new bingo lane potentially somewhere or not, since I already have the M column. But fishing off 1 or 2 tiles to try and hit a very specific or a few specific words from the J that will score very, very well. Considering I have the blank, that is something that I can be considering every turn after having played tail. And that's also a consideration here that the engine doesn't take into account. There are very precise ways that a human can navigate through this position. So maybe playing Moa and threatening to keep scoring along the first row, or bingoing is a better call, just because it prevents me from making those potentially game-ending fishes for an 100-point bingo from the J, or 90-point bingo. Here I play Task. This play and Risk, after a lot of simulation, are very close to one another in value. So it's possible that playing Risk is a bit better, given that there are lots of unseen eyes. But I liked the potential that Task gave for me to draw a bingo from the J. If I draw like an N and an E, I get jinglers, etc., etc. Of course, I'm keeping the G, which isn't fantastic. But yeah, by playing Task, I put Chloe in the position of maybe wanting to block the M column, maybe wanting to block the J, not really knowing what exactly is the best route for her to try and block. And maybe the best route is for her to keep scoring, which she does. She plays befores. But again, it's always a consideration whether I'm going to have a bingo from the J, which could be crushing. So the play of Borax blocks those J bingos just like Moa would last turn, and goes for a potential bingo on the M row, or on the M column herself. But I think I like this play of Bevors, just trying to keep up the scoring pressure because I'm now down 83 points, so it's going to be really hard. But I have a bingo rack. I got really close to getting a bingo from the J. And I have the play of Griddle. I actually thought that I had the bingo of Legier at M8, making Ute NAD, which is not a word, gig and LI. For some reason, I thought that worked. I think I was inverting the D and the G in my head. So I started thinking about how maybe playing Legier could be good here. The problem in this position is if I bingo, I'm drawing 6 tiles out of the bag, and that's it. The bag is empty, which means that it's almost impossible that I'm going to draw letters that threaten or even like go out or even threaten to go out next turn, which means that Chloe's going to have the opportunity at a close score or a tied score to figure out an endgame sequence that'll pretty much beat every bingo that I could potentially play here. So playing a bingo here is actually a mistake, probably, unless there isn't an option that seems to do any better. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 draws after playing Griddle for 76, bringing me to 404, that actually do it for me. Like she could maybe have DNNTTUV, and then I'm probably winning the game. But there are very, very few racks that she can have that a bingo will beat here. So foregoing the bingo to try and go for a win is the call here, and the question is how. Should I try and fish for jinglers? I'm very close to, or even something like jinglier. If I play off the D, I can hit jinglier or jinglers. So that seems like a pretty good option. So if I play DE for 6, for example, not only am I still threatening bingos on the M column, I'm also threatening bingos starting from the J. So the dual threats are impossible to block all at once. But the problem is when you start thinking about, again, the number of letters left in the bag, you start to realize that if I play off 1 letter, I'm leaving 5 in the bag. All Chloe really has to do here is either make a play from the J or some other play that blocks the J and doesn't empty the bag, and I'll be in the same position that I am this turn, forced to potentially play a bingo that just leaves me homeless in the end game, and just never winning. This time I might have outplays, but it won't matter because if I play off for 6 points, I'm down 77. If she plays something for 11 points, I'm down 88. So any bingo that I draw is going to score 75 points or something. I'll be down 13 points, and she'll have 1 play to score enough to outrun 1 or 2 letters that I have on my rack, which is completely, it's a walk in the park for Chloe. So fishing off 1 tile is not the best option here. And actually fishing off 2 tiles or even 3 tiles is probably not the option for the same reason. It's probably not an option for the same reason, because if Chloe doesn't empty the bag, she's guaranteeing herself another turn, which will usually allow her to have more points than me at the end of the game, which is the goal in Scrabble. So I have to play 4 tiles or 5 tiles here, because that most accurately prevents Chloe from not emptying the bag and winning the game in the end game. So I play Guild, which I think has to be the best option here, despite the juicy idea of trying to draw from the J. I don't think it actually works in practice when you're playing somebody who knows what they're doing, but I might be wrong. This play also has some issues, because if I do draw into a bingo, it'll play on the N the N column and the M column usually, and she might be able to make a play on the M column that interferes with everything that I might have. And she actually does that pretty accurately. Of course, there's always the possibility after guild that I still draw a bingo from the J. Not a lot of words start with J, but with the letters that I had, with the blank, it's still definitely a possibility. Luckily, from her perspective, she has AEINOTU. There's actually no bingo from the J that I'm threatening. So she just had to choose the most defensive play on the M column to block as many bingos as possible, which is probably Entia. There doesn't seem to be a better option here that blocks more bingos. I can still have Detrain. That is the only threat after Entia. And in analysis, we didn't really find any better play. So this is a really, really great find from Chloe, just trying to interfere as much as possible, putting the two consonants next to each other, and making the I letter I sometimes have to hook to bingo, and the I is not a very hookable letter. So yeah, this is probably the perfect play for Chloe in the position, which wins every single time I don't have Detrain. And I don't have Detrain, I got very close. So instead of just making a normal play, I play Viner, even though I know it's not a word, because I'm just hoping that she'll challenge it off and somehow give me a spot to bingo, which is just a really, really stupid idea. It's basically me like throwing in the towel in a way that's just like I am psychologically damaged from the fact that I'm losing this game. I talked about this when Ori Swift was playing his phonies against Michael in the finals, Michael Fagan, and I was just like, this is not like, this is just Ori like not being able to control his emotions and how upset he is at losing, which is exactly what this was. I can play it off as like an attempt to swindle the game or to build up spread, but really all that it is me not accepting the fact that I lost. So Chloe plays YO. I go out with Tat, and I lose 390 to 443. So again, a very well played game by Chloe. She did make some mistakes. I also made a couple of, I think, inaccuracies this game. And yeah, it was too much. It was too much. So yeah, what did I do wrong? Hung was like the one play that probably damaged my winning chances. Although I did draw into reconned after, but yeah, just wasn't enough. So yeah, brutal loss again. Like this is now 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, losses in a row, or maybe I lost round 7, 8, 9. I think this is 5 losses in a row. This was round 11. So now I'm at 5 and 6. Still, my spread is okay. So it's still salvageable, but I'm going to have to pretty much win like every game until like the last day to have any chance of being in the running. And yeah, so that was the game. I actually have a second game that I'm going to show, but I think that I'm going to show it separately. I think I took a pretty long time on this here game. So I'll turn it into a separate video, I think.